So I want to thank Dr. Alpson for sponsoring breakfast this morning. The Alpsons cover the I say the 57th anniversary of your bar mitzvah.
That's right.
You should be zoche to at least 50 more.
Amen.
And also for Dr. Niren's mother, Sarah Bas Binyamin, and Neshama should have an aliyah.
Amen.
We are on page Taf Tzadi Vav. Taf Tzadik Vav is his commentary on Megillas Eicha. We refer to it as Eicha, but technically the name of the book is called Kinos, or Lamentations. Eicha is the first word in that in the Sefer, so we call it Megillas Eicha, but technically in the Gemara it's called Kinos.
Well, we call Kinos something separate.
Right. So as you can see on the top, he has Kinos, but he's referring to the real name for Megillas Eicha. And there on page Taf Tzadi Vav, he quotes a Gemara in Yoma. Yoma Perek Hey. And the reason why we're doing this, he has a lot of comments on different parts of Eicha, but we've been discussing over the last few weeks his perspective of the collecting of sparks while we are in exile. And now he looks at it from the Eicha perspective of that, and has a very practical application towards us and our place of what we're doing. And so that's why I wanted to focus in on this as a continuation of what we discussed in the weeks past. So, Yoma Perek Hey. Amar le hahu mina le Rabbi Chanina. There was a certain min. Min typically refers to the Christians of those times, but it could also mean a heretic. This heretic said to Rabbi Chanina, Hashta bari temein asun. Now you are all impure. Tichsiv, it says in the book of Eicha, Tumasa beshuleha. Now what this is referring to is right at the beginning of the book of Eicha, when it says Chet Chata Yerushalayim has sinned, Al Kain Lenida Hayasa, therefore she, Yerushalayim, and by extension the Jewish people, are considered to her husband, to Hashem, like Nida. Kol Mechabdeha Hiziluha, this is the text in Eicha. Kol Mechabdeha Hiziluha, all those who had previously shown her honor now disgrace her. Kira'u Ervasa, for they have seen her shame. Gamhi nancha vatashav achar, and she herself sighs and has gone backwards. This is all from Eicha. Tumasa beshuleha, her tuma, her impurity is at her hem, as if suggesting that she's a woman who's nida, and therefore you can see that she's tameh from the bottom of her clothing. Lo zachra acharisa, she didn't think about the end. She didn't think about what was to come, and therefore, Vateret Pelaim, look to the extent of her fall. Ein Menachem La, she has no comfort. And then the Navi turns to Hashem and says, Re'ei Hashem es ani, see Hashem, my pain, ki higdil oye, for the enemy has grown so great. So he, this heretic, trying to suggest the rejection of the Jewish people, says that you are all tameh. As it says in Eicha, Tumasa beshuleha, you can see the impurity of the Jewish people at her hem. And therefore, Ve'ena shchina shore beinechem, and therefore God is not amongst you. And this is a point that we've heard over the last few thousand years. God has rejected you, and you are no longer His people. Amarle. So the rabbi responds, Tachazi maksiv b'hu, but it says in the Torah, Hashorchein itam betoch tumosam, that Hashem dwells amongst the Jewish people even within their state of purity. It's in the Torah itself, meaning afilu bizman shanu tameim. Yeah, we agree that we are tamei and we are separate, like the woman who has been distanced from her husband due to her impurity, but that doesn't mean that the husband has left his wife. You still have he still dwells with her in the same house. And that was his response. So tzarich ian b'may pligis. I'd like to know what exactly is the debate here. Umahu halashon shal shuleha. What does it mean her impurity is at her hem? like the bottom of her clothing. D'chsiv tumasa b'shuleha, her impurity is at her hem. Okay, so he goes straight into this point we've been discussing over the last number of weeks. So let's begin with the Zohar. The Chachmei HaEmes and the sages of truth, the great Kabbalists who tell us, She'ikar tam hagalius shel Yisrael. The reason why the Jewish people are in exile, Lahayu Ella, is only kedei levarer hanitzotzos, to collect and purify the sparks, v'ha'oros, and the lights, shenaflu l'b'tach ha'klipa, which have fallen amongst the husks, amongst the world. Obviously, as we've discussed over the last few weeks, that doesn't mean that exile is a good thing, because had we been doing the right thing, then the Beis Hamikdash itself, standing in Yerushalayim, would have had the power to draw all the sparks towards it, and from all over the world people would have come to join the Jewish people. And those souls that needed to be returned would come on their own. And all the fixings that need to happen would happen on its own through our process of the Beis Hamikdash. And that's why in the Beis Hamikdash we bring karbanos, and the karbanos includes within it all the aspects of creation. You have the domem, the inanimate, that's the nisach hamayim of the water, and the salt which is brought on each carbon, and the wood which is placed on the mizbeach, although technically that's vegetative. Then you have the vegetable, which is the flour, and the wood, and the oil, and the wine. And you have the animals, which are the animals that are being brought. And you had the people who came. First of all, the people who did teshuvah themselves. Every time you brought a carbon, you were supposed to see yourself as if you were being sacrificed, as the Ramban explains at the beginning of Parshas Vayikra. That's first of all. But then there was a place in the Beis Hamikdash where we welcomed people to come from all over the world to bring karbanos. We, the Jewish people, have always accepted karbanos from goyim. It's hard to imagine that a goy, in fact, the rules for a goy being able to bring a carbon are in certain ways more lenient than for a Jew. So, for example, a Yisrael Mumar, a Jew who is a heretic, and a real heretic, not just someone who fails to believe, but someone who qualifies as a real apikaris, we might not accept a carbon from such people, while we wouldn't have such rules and regulations when it comes to a Gentile. And the reason is because we believe that Kibesi Beis Tefillah Yikarei L'chal Ha'amim, this is the house of Hashem, and Shlomo says in his tefillah in Sefer Melachim, where he asks, and this is an incredible idea, it almost sounds to think that this was something we believed in, how there were limits as to where a guy could go. And for example, the Greeks were very upset by these signs that said that only Jews may go past this point, and which is why that boundary, that border that was fenced off to keep the Gentiles from entering, the Greeks actually smashed down that wall. And many people don't realize when they're saying this, in Yevanim Nikbitzu Alai, you say, Upartzu Chomos Migdalai, they breached the walls of my tower. That refers to specifically them smashing the walls of where they were allowed to go. But that's all when we had a Beis Hamikdash, and we were able to, through the power of the Beis Hamikdash, fix the whole world through the process of the avoda. Shlosh Dvarim Ha'olam Omed, Torah, Al Avoda, Al Gemilas Chasadim, and even though avoda today refers to tefillah, in those days it referred to the avoda in the Beis Hamikdash. And at that point, there were so many souls that were being brought to the Jewish people. The conversion rate was incredible of people who came to Yerushalayim and felt like they were a Jewish soul, and that's why we have so many of our greats, especially towards the end, the last number of years in the Beis Hamikdash. We had all the greats, such as Rabbi Akiva was a descendant of Gerim, Rabbi Meir was a descendant of Nero himself. You had Unkelos, you had Achilos, earlier you had Shmai and Naphtali, and these are the greatest of the Jews in our history, who were these souls that were brought closer by the Beis Hamikdash. But when we didn't do a good job, when we failed to perform our task, which is to perform the avodah in the Beis Hamikdash in the proper way and do the things which we needed to do, that was taken from us. But we still need to fix the world, and so instead we have to go out into the world and suffer. and go through great difficulties in order to accomplish the same thing which we could have done in our homeland. And I haven't seen anyone say this, but I don't think it's a big leap to suggest that that's exactly why the sign of the Churban Beis Hamikdash was the Roman emperor sending an offering that we were unable to bring because of a blemish that was put into the korban by a Jew, as if to suggest that we, because of our baseless hatred, did not allow ourselves to be able to fix the world in this way where we could accept their korban. And so that story is not just one individual case of an offering not being brought, but was a reflection of how we in general have lowered ourselves, and we don't allow ourselves to be on that height where we could fix the world from this central station, but instead we need to go out into the world to fix it.
Can you tie this idea into the Shoah?
Not necessarily. Because the suffering which we experience is typically not involved in the process of fixing the rest of the world, but more an internal process that happens. So why we ended up in that place and why we needed to leave that place, I can explain that after all those years in Germany, either we went too far and we corrupted, and now we no longer were on the level to fix, or we had fixed and we should have left some time before, but we didn't. Whatever that case may be, the suffering that we have to go through doesn't always, unless you know, transfer from this. In other words, there isn't a simple answer to say, and because of that, these many people had to die or anything like that. Now he says, and he hasn't done this before, but he says that you might think, well, this is some Kabbalistic idea, and why doesn't it appear in the Gemara itself, if this is such an important aspect of the exile to elevate the sparks? So he says, actually, there is a Gemara. Gam Chazal Amru, the Gemara tells us, regarding why we go into exile, Kulum Adam Zoreah saw why would you take a perfectly good piece of wheat, a kernel of wheat, and destroy it by putting it into the ground? The answer is because you expect that kernel of wheat should turn into a wheat stalk with many kernels on it. I have planted the Jewish people in exile. The Jewish people went into exile in order to bring back all the Jewish souls that were lost. So he says this is almost a statement in the Talmud Bavli. You don't have to go to the Zohar to this. It's pretty clear in the Gemara that that's what our sages are intending.
But this is Gerim, this is converts, not... isn't gathering the sparks something broader than getting...
Oh, the Gerim is the highest level of the collection of sparks. Now the Gemara is not going to use the term sparks because that was in Kabbalistic terms, which was not shared in the days of the Gemara. These terms would not be used until almost 1,000 years after the Gemara is written, when the Zohar is very clear about it. And then we had some works that mentioned it beforehand, but nothing so explicit. But that's pretty clear. Why are we calling it planting wheat in order to bring out more wheat? So that's what he's saying.
Does anyone talk about, we were probably closest at the time of Shlomo when all the sparks were gathered at that point?
Well, he was trying. He was definitely trying. He married a woman from every nation because he was hoping to, because he thought he could bring the Mashiach in his days. And as it turns out, we weren't quite ready, and so they brought their idols with them. So he wasn't collecting sparks or unfinished sparks. And yeah.
Chabad is really working out.
Well, that's exactly where they're coming from. The Chabad movement meant to go out to the world and try to put tefillin on every Jew and get women to light candles on Friday night. That's all part of this Hasidic / Kabbalistic perspective of how the world needs to be fixed.
But there are no Gerim. We are just trying to bring back the Jews, but we are not trying to convert.
Well, we don't try to convert, but that's still us going out there and collecting the sparks of the Gerim. On the contrary, if someone wants to convert, we have to try to talk them out of it, but that's because we have to know that they're a Jewish soul. And because sometimes people just want to do something hip or different in their life. We don't want anyone to join the Jewish people in order to deal with their midlife crisis, right? So we want to make sure that they really are a Jewish soul trapped in a non-Jewish body, and then we can get them. That's why we discourage. But we do realize that whenever someone does convert, that's a spark or a soul that's been saved. He says, "V'galus ha'achron hichpid." The last exile, our exile, is the heaviest. And he quotes the Zohar, "Shagu'ula lo tavo adamatu raglim baraglin." Exactly what this means is not so clear, but the redemption will not come until the feet reach the feet. Meaning, until we reach down and fix all the way down to the feet, kedetnan, the Gemara uses an interesting term, be'ikvas mashicha chutzpah yaska. At the heels of Mashiach, chutzpah will increase in the world. I doubt there's ever been a world when we had as much chutzpah as we had today. And if Mashiach is not coming this hour, maybe he is, but if he doesn't come, it only feels like chutzpah is going to increase. So you wonder what the limit is. But the Gemara says that in we call it the end of days, chutzpah will be too much. And it's called ikvus Mashiach, the heels. Ikvus mamash, he says it's called the heels. The fisha hayoser mu'ulos kvar alu begalius arishon, because the highest sparks have already been elevated in the first exiles. In the days of the Babylonian exile and the Persian exile and the Greek exile, that's where the big, clear, bright lights were already fixed.
Well, that would make sense because it's closer to the source.
Right?
They're more fresh.
Ubegalus ha'achron, in our exile, yesh lahosi otzan hanitzotza shenaflu lamata lamata. We need to find those sparks that fell really, really low and deep into darkness. Toch metzulos haiklipa, in the murky depths of the husks. Peim kashim levararam, and these are the most difficult sparks to fix. In other words, if you look and talk to anyone who's a spark that's been saved, and you'll see that the dark places that they were in terms of how difficult it would have been for them to have been saved and still to come back, and the whole process in each individual journey, it's never as simple as it was in ancient days. And just this concept that we need to go to places like the United States and where it was so far from religion and meaning and depth, and everything is so superficial, and to try to save souls in a world like this really means we need to be emanating so much more light than we would in the past. Everyone knows this Gemara. Doros Rishonim, the earlier generations, Shinizgale Avonam, that their sins were revealed. We know why the previous exiles who went into exile, idolatry, adultery, murder. Nizgale Kitzam, so they were given a date. They were told 70 years. Someone commits a certain crime, you get 35 years to life, you get sentenced. There's a system that's supposed to be followed. You commit this kind of crime, you get this long a sentence. Doris achronim shelo nizgala avonam, but our exile, where our sin was not revealed, no nizgala kitzam, the end is also not revealed. Now everyone should be shaking their heads, going, "What do you mean the sin is not revealed? Right. We know exactly what we did wrong." Pirshu Mafarshim, so the commentaries explain, she'avonam haya b'shvil sinas chinam, that since the sin is baseless hatred, it's so hard to change that. Because you can't reprove anyone what you don't see. If it's an action, so the people whose job it is to give musar can say people need to stop worshipping idols, need to stop killing each other, need to stop committing all these sins.
We didn't have a mechanism to give us that timeline either, though. He had no Nevi'im at that point. By the second.
Yeah, we had ways of doing it. Chacham Adif min Navi, but he's saying that doesn't matter. We weren't given because we can't reach the place where the sins are happening. It's all inside of each of us, the hatred and the animosity that we feel towards each other, and you can't give Musar on that. Everyone needs to fix themselves. We can't work as a community to stop these actions. You can't stop feelings of others.
Isn't that stronger now with all the organized branches of Judaism and all the animosity is even more organized, I think. It isn't even like individuals, it's groups are frustrated with other groups. It seems like it's worse.
Right, that's true, except that the real baseless hatred isn't even there. The real baseless hatred is within one home, within one shul, within one community. And if we were better with ourselves and the people around us, in general, that would probably spread to a better level of understanding amongst the communities. But if we're all so strung up in this way, we're unable. It's all about myself and what I want. So then, it doesn't transfer that way. You're right. There is this divisiveness that we can see, but the feelings inside.
Because it's more structured and formal,
right.
The divisiveness.
Yeah.
Harder to break through. You can walk into someone else's property, but when there's a fence there, it's harder to jump the fence. It's one thing just walking over the border, but if there's a wall.
That's true. But the deeper level of sinas chinam is the people who don't like the people sitting across the bench from them.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, Perik Vav of the Sanhedrin, the Gemara tells us Sanhedrin. Svira leil Reb Nechemia. There's a debate in the Gemara there, but Reb Nechemia is of the opinion she'avona nistaros Yisrael enam arevim zelazeh. When it comes to things that are concealed, even though there's a din kol Yisrael arevim zelazeh, we are all guarantors for each other. So Reb Nechemia's opinion is that we're only guarantors for each other for things which we know about. The chsiv, as it says in the pasuk, hanistaros, the concealed things, Lashem Elokeinu. Ubeperik Testament Tzia, it's brilliant how he ties all this together. The Gemara tells us in Bava Metzia, Amrina lasavo al beso lavot avoto, that the halacha is that if someone borrows something from someone, and it's been a while, and the person isn't paying back, so the halacha is you're allowed to take a mashkon. You're allowed to take some kind of collateral. You can take some object, and there's rules about how you take it. There's rules about when you can have it. You have to give it back when the person needs it and stuff like that. But the halacha is that you cannot enter the house of the borrower to take their mashkon. You have to wait outside while that person brings it out to you. That's the halacha. However, but when it comes to a guarantor, this isn't the person who borrowed from you, that's someone who guaranteed the loan. So there the halacha is you're actually allowed to go into the house of the guarantor. So to a certain extent, the liability of the guarantor is greater than the borrower. So he says that when it comes to open sins, so the leaders of the generation, the elders, when they don't give musar, actually they are the guarantors. They're the ones who are supposed to be reproving us. So they bear this burden more than anyone else. While the rest of the people might be considered unintentional sinners and even people who are compelled to sin.
You mentioned yesterday when we were talking about the Holocaust and how these great Rebbes, I named a bunch of Rebbes that passed away, maybe because they were responsible for the generation on a spiritual
to
level.
a certain extent, yes. Yeah, meaning even if these individuals might have given the right musar, but if just in general the leaders were not turning things around, right? The leaders of the generation are held more responsible than the individuals. So v'kol acharon shal midas harachmim v'amekatrigim hi metucha keneged hamechichim shelo michu. So then all the anger of even the attribute of mercy and those and the prosecutor certainly is all focused towards the Baalei Musar, towards the people who could do something about it and don't. The Shabbos, the Gemara tells us as a kenim shelo michu b'sarim, that the Gemara says that the Gemara tells us that when God, by the first destruction of the first base of Mikdash, Hashem sent out the angel to kill all the guilty people, and the prosecuting angel said, "Why only them? What about the tzaddikim?" He said, "Well, why should we hurt the tzaddikim?" He said, "They didn't do anything about it." So says God, Hashem says to the attribute of justice, He says, "But you and I both know that even if they would have given Musar, it wouldn't have helped." And the attribute of justice responded to Hashem, "You and I both know that, but they didn't." And so even if it wouldn't have helped, they should have attempted to turn the generation around, and then God decreed punishment upon the righteous as well. And furthermore, it says in Yecheskel, Hashem collects from His holy ones. So that's why, because when you have open sins, the leaders of the generation are guilty, and so the system is very clear. But sins that are in secret, are very difficult. The attribute of judgment is out against everyone. But not just the elders. They can't give musar for what they don't see. And because of the way they've behaved, let's go on. The Jewish people are sometimes called one nefesh, like one person. The Jewish people are supposed to be one soul, one body. Umos nikru nefashos, while the nations of the world, this is by Esav, it says by Yaakov shivim nefesh, and by Esav it says nefashos, shechalukim heim, reshus harabim latuma, the nations of the world, impurity is referred to as reshus harabim, the place where everything is dispersed and divisiveness, while the place of holiness and the Jewish people are referred to as the Rishus HaYachid. This is why we don't carry on Shabbos from a Rishus HaYachid to a Rishus HaRabim, because on Shabbos that's the place, Beini Ubein B'nai Yisrael Osi L'Olam, it's a private domain, so we can carry as much as we want within the private domain, because that's where we belong on Shabbos. But transferring an object from Rishus HaYachid to Rishus HaRabim is transferring on Shabbos, is desecrating Shabbos, because you're moving out of the special place where Shabbos is. When we hate each other, when we show hatred towards each other, we cause the Jewish people to go from being one body and one soul, we become Rishus HaRabim. And so the husks, the impurity, can attach itself to us. Now let's go back to this heretic. This heretic, he knew he knew that in this final exile was supposed to collect the sparks that are low in the murky darkness of the husks. And he says, "But how are you going to do that? There's so much hatred amongst you. You guys have been lost in that impurity, in that divisiveness." He says, "You guys are tameh. That's what it means that you are tameh. You're gone into exile to collect the sparks that are on the hem." That's why the impurity is on the hem, meaning we're on the lowest level that we're trying to fix, and you've gone down into that place to go fix it. And not only have you failed to fix it, you've messed up, and you're lost in the impurity. We came to America to try to fix the world, and 75+% of us are lost in this country. We've been dropping sparks like there's a hole in our pockets, and that's
like the Divrei Shaul explaining why the mechanism of the paraduma, that a person who is trying to make somebody else tahar by being in that place can make himself tameh.
Right, you do become tameh. That's right, and that's what we say. Baal Shem Tov talks about this. If you're going to collect someone out of the mud, expect to get dirty. But you don't want that if you're trying to pull someone out of the mud, that person pulls you in and then pulls down each person who comes after you. That's going further, right, than that statement from the Divrei. And that's what's happening. So we can go out there and do kiruv and try to bring people closer and teach people about Yiddishkeit, but we are losing at a much faster rate than we're pulling people in. And so,
But wasn't that predicted somewhere that at the time before the Mashiach that we would be losing many? I thought there was somewhere that it was.
well, only because it's such a dark and difficult task to fix it, that's what's expected, but that doesn't mean we're forced to do so. If we would do a better job of, as he says, loving each other and connecting, that would create this special place where the Jewish people become one body, and we wouldn't be lost. If there would be 3 people standing outside the mud pit pulling this person out, then no one would get pulled in, right?
Isn't it though, like, more like a refinement of the sparks when you, like the chamushim, like 120?
Yeah, we don't want to go there though. We don't want to say that we're just picking out the best and the greatest. That is true to a certain extent, but he's not focused on that aspect of the fixing. He's more focused on the collecting of the sparks.
Is it the same thing that the reformers, that's what I think their notion what reform Jewish came, that got too much chesed, too much kindness toward the other Jews, so all of a sudden they lose how they trend. So this is another side effect.
Right. I mean, I have a friend who's a Reform rabbi who's very, he was almost crying when he heard at a recent, just a few years ago, that he heard a fellow Reform rabbi who was insisting that the Reform movement be completely encouraging of interfaith marriages. And like we should be welcoming and spreading it. And he was so hurt by this because their own movement is moving further in that direction. And that's what we're trying to save Jews. And it's not just assimilation. The assimilation, the marriage isn't the only part of it. There's also people who give up the faith and just disappear, and they remember they're Jewish, but they don't even know what that means. And we're losing so many of those. And he's writing this 300 years ago. This is before it got really bad. He's saying that's the Galus HaAchron, that's the final exile, is that we will just be losing them one after the other. And he's saying, and that's what's so powerful about this, that this is a result of our general divisiveness and our not being able to get along with each other. So he says that's what the heretic is saying. There's no fixing the Jewish people. Who's going to give you Musar? You guys are divided and cut off from each other just like the husks. There's no way you're pulling anyone out. One person isn't going to pull another person out of the mud. And that's what it means in Eicha, that the tumah is at the hem, at the bottom of the clothing. That the Jewish people went to collect the sparks and instead they received the tumah. Shem b'shalayim, which is at the bottom of the clothing. The Bishlam and Begalius Arishon, so the first exiles, Lo Nitmu Velaktu, they went into exile, they stayed Jews, they collected the sparks and went back. Avol Bekan Hochul Alaki, they've gone to collect Venavdu and they're lost. Shekivlu Atuma B'Shalash Laklipa, they've received all this impurity. And that's why the verse continues, Lo Zachar Achrisa, her end is not remembered. Lo Zachar Yisrael Sham Achronim Em Yosekashem Yarishonim. The Jewish people didn't think about the fact that the final exile is going to be even more difficult than the previous ones. But Lo Shamru Atzman Karoi, they didn't watch themselves. But Naflu Venavda, the Jewish people arrived in this country and said, we will be just like these people. Chas v'shalom, to even say the words, the people who dropped their tefillin into the ocean before they came, so that they can now start their life as real Yankees. And they thought this way, and this type of processing, this coming, and that's why I'm not suggesting anyone change their ways, but there are communities when they arrived where they said, Loshinu Hashemam Loshonim Albusham, they said we're going to keep Jewish names and we're going to wear this old European clothing. and and they're going to keep speaking their language, and so they speak Yiddish. Their argument is, everyone says, well, what are they trying to wear? Jewish clothing? It's not Jewish clothing. It's the clothing of European noblemen. No, it's about coming to the land which they think is the final, they believe is the final, and they realize that the challenge here is going to be, can you remain distinct? And they feel that that would be the way to remain distinct. Now, if you disagree, then you tell me, what are you doing to remain distinct? Not just to survive as a Jew, but to actually remain separate. So he says, that's why the verse continues, Vateret playim. And so she falls tremendously. Ki ein menachem la, there's no comfort for her. No one's going to come and prove this. All these sins are secret. There's an impurity here. And the truth is, you go into any shul in the United States, any Orthodox shul, and go person by person and ask them if they are guilty of sinas chinam, I don't think you'll get a 5% response of yes. So who's doing the sinas chinam?
The people who aren't honest with themselves.
I think it's 95%. Right? So how does that happen? Because it's inside of us, it's concealed, it's secret. If there was a blue mark that ran across your forehead showing how much sinas chinam you had, we'd all be working on fixing it. So this is really bad. This is bad. It almost seems hopeless. So that's why the Gemara says, "V'heishiv lo Reb Chanina." So Reb Chanina says, "No, tachaz you come and see Maksiv b'hu." You know what it says of Hashem? Hashochen item b'toch tumosam. He dwells amongst them even in their impurity. Afilu b'zman she'anu tumeim shchina shor b'neinu. Even when we are impure, the shchina rests among us. V'kashin, I don't understand. The matiritzu zev aksiv nami tumosam b'shaleha. But what does that mean? It says her impurity is at her hem. Kvar asa ma'isa shehecher abayis v'nesrachim imenu. What do you mean God dwells amongst us in our impurity? He destroyed the temple. And who said that God dwells amongst us even when the impurity is baseless hatred? Maybe it's only referring to when we do open sins where it's the elders who are held accountable. Okay, let's just go to the next paragraph. The answer is, he says, look at the beginning of that verse. V'kiper al hakodesh, he shall atone for the holiness. Mitumas b'nei Yisrael, from the impurity of the Jewish people. Sheikpida Torah sheyinikravim akarbanos b'kedusha tahara. The Torah insists we should bring the karbanos in holiness and purity. This is why. Now, without going into complexities of this, but the Beis Hamikdash, the rules of tahara, of purity, in terms of the Beis Hamikdash, are really, really complicated and extreme. In Hashem, it should be very soon, b'meher b'yameinu, may it be even today, when the Beis Hamikdash will be rebuilt. We will have to keep the laws of Tumah and Tahara. Get ready, if as anyone here has attended college and has learned really complicated trigonometry, calculus, astrophysics, stuff like that, nothing compared to the complexities of Tumah and Tahara. And everyone's going to have to take a crash course if you'd like to be able to bring a carbon on Erev Pesach.
Korbanot Tzibur you can bring in.
Well, we'll get to that. That's good. So we're saying like really complicated stuff. We're talking about Avos HaTumah Rishon and Sheni and Shlishi and Tumas Sheretz and Tumas Zav and Tumas Meis, and which things transfer to a person, to Kalim, which things become tummy by touching, by carrying, by being in the vicinity, being in the same tent, coming into contact. If a person touches a vessel while you're holding the tumah, after you've let go of the tumah, and all the rules of purity, impurity, you can't imagine. It is a lifetime of study, and of course we're all going to expect it to download it in a day. In Mitzvah Hashem, we should all have such problems. However, the rules of Kedusha and Tahara.
Are there cliff notes to that?
Well, you can learn the shortest way of learning it is to read the Rambam, Hilchos Tumah V'Tahara, but
Shortest way is to have you just tell me what it is.
well, yeah, you just get a rabbi standing next to you, say, nope, don't touch that.
Exactly.
Don't touch that.
Don't touch me.
Okay, go to the mikveh. Don't touch me. And yet, but there are certain karbanos, and that's what Eitam was referring to. There are certain karbanos which we can bring even when we're tamei. But carbon Pesach and the carbon Tamid, which is the daily offering, you can bring even in a state of impurity. The rule is that impurity is pushed away when it comes to the tzibor. If the entire community is tameh, we can ignore the tumah. I'm going to try to read this a little faster to get through this. Hashem rests among us even when we're tameh. The reason is the reason why tumah is such a problem is because the side of impurity, the damaging forces, can affect impurity. But there's a certain power of the light of Hashem, the impurity gets pushed away. It doesn't say hutra b'tzibur, which means we don't rule that it's permitted to bring karbanos. It's dechuya, meaning the impurity gets pushed away. And I'm skipping a couple of lines. He says, when all of the community is tameh, and they brought the carbon betuma, he's saying it's not that we would allow the carbon to become tameh. He's suggesting, this is his own suggestion, that the carbon actually doesn't become tameh. It remains tahar because the power of the carbon is that even when the person is tamei, it is protected because there's such a great light that it pushes away the husks, and the kodesh doesn't become chol. He says, but this kind of light only comes when it's impossible without that. So he says, this will be in the future, when the time of the redemption will come, even though we will all be tamei, God's pleasant light will be revealed to the world, he will push away all the damaging forces, and redeem us, and return our hearts to his service. So therefore it reads like this. Her impurity is at her ham, which is sinas chinam. Lo zachar acharisa shelo nizgala kitzah b'shvel oven zeh. We don't know when the end will be. Ubechol yom berchaso meruba mechaber teit plam. We fall b'shvin she'em enachem la. There's no comfort she'em yachal achichem. There's no one who can help us become better. Lefikach yavshel hagalas l'skatzu. Therefore, the exile can't be shortened. L'chein rei Hashem ba'ani. That's when we say, Hashem, look at our pain. Ki higdaloi. If the enemy is great, af al pishik sheyavo zman hagula. But when the redemption will come, Yigalenu, he will redeem us. V'yeshochin itanu, he will dwell amongst us. Mikal makom benkach ubenkach. But until then, Anachnu b'tzara gadola, we are in serious trouble. The enemy overpowers and strengthens himself. Hashem will purify us. May it be soon in our days. We can begin this process by at least fixing our sinas chinam and working on loving each other.